Welcome to the Airbnb Roadmap, the podcast designed to navigate you through the entire journey of short-term rental success. Whether you're just starting out or ready to take your hosting game to the next level. My husband and I became super hosts within just months of launching our first Airbnb and have proudly kept that title ever since. With over 350 reviews and overall 4.95 star ratings, we picked up a hack or two I'm excited to share with you. In each episode, I break down the strategies, insights, and industry secrets that set profitable short-term rentals apart. From choosing the right property, understanding local regulations, and obtaining your listing to go beyond just the basics. I'm here to share everything you need to succeed. So if you're ready to map out your path to Airbnb success and unlock the full potential of short-term rentals, join me on the Airbnb Roadmap. Your journey starts here. Hey, it's Brittany Wenninger with From Porch Realty, powered by Real Broker LLC. If you are wondering why I am starting to say that stuff, it's because it's compliance. You know how I always keep it real on this podcast, and the broker was like, hey, you guys start saying who you're with. I'm like, okay. So there we are with Real Broker. Today's episode is all about how Clay and I got to point A to point Z, maybe not even Z, not that many steps, when it comes to finding our short-term rental that we actually just closed on. If you listened to the past episodes, then you know that we just closed on another short-term rental. And I just want to talk to you about the process that we took from, we even did some hiccups this time too. Every single short-term rental that we purchased, there's always some type of hiccups, no matter what. And the funny thing is that I'm a real estate agent full-time. I specialize in short-term rentals in Wisconsin, and I still make mistakes like all the time. So let's just dive on into it. Every single night, and I shouldn't say every night, but most of the nights, Clay and I are sitting on the couch, and he usually sends me cabins to look at, to review, and figure out if we want to purchase it or not. Well, I usually just ignore those text messages because we're usually just not in the right space or right situation to purchase another one. Well, I started getting the itch, and Clay was like, ooh, yeah, she wants to buy another one. Let's get at her. So he was sending me some cabins, and I started looking myself. And being a full-time real estate agent, I see good deals all the time, especially with short-term rental cabins. And I usually just give it to a client. And that's actually my biggest thing is when you are working with me and I find a good short-term rental deal in the areas that you are actually looking for with the criteria that you are looking for, I will prioritize you over me any day. Well, this one cabin came up. It was not in the area that any of my other clients were looking at, not any of their criterias either. And I showed Clay. He was sitting right next to me at the time. And I was like, ooh, what about this one? And honestly, I think he actually sent it to me while he was sitting next to me. Yes, it might sound goofy, but if he finds a cabin, he just sends it to me in a text message. And then that way I can, dive a little bit deeper into it. But we both saw this cabin. I'm like, ooh, this one has some potential. It's really cute on the outside. Inside needs some work. The inside literally looks like a grandma decorated it 30 or 40 years ago and never updated it. And I love those properties because people usually just bypass those because of the furniture. Furniture is not even going to come with the cabin anyways. And if it needs a paint job, it needs a paint job. If it needs some wallpaper taken down, no biggie. So this is what this cabin was all about, just cosmetics. So the next day, you know that we're serious when we keep on talking about it the next day. And I called the county. County? Good. Not that many restrictions. Called the township and left some voicemails. Well, 2 of the 3 people got back to me, and they both said the exact same thing, that short-term rentals are allowed. And even one girl was like, what's a short-term rental? I was like, no way. Like Airbnb, Verbo? And that's kind of what I talk about in the Airbnb Roadmap podcast, is some people don't even know like what short-term rental really is. So that's when I was like, all right, like it's an Airbnb. Anyways, so all the rules and regulations checked out. I texted Clay and I was like, hey, we might be onto something. Like this is good. When he got home, he then analyzed the deal, trying to figure out how much we need to make, like to break even, what the normal rate would be, and then what the normal rate would be in the wintertime. So summer versus winter is always different. So we ran the numbers, analyzed the deal, and the deal was working out. And I was like, all right. So another step is passed. Well, once we found out the rules and regulations, it was good. And then we analyzed the deal. It was good. The next step is the lender. So we are at a point in our investment career that we need to start doing a DSCR loan because our debt to income ratio is just too high. We connected with 2 DSCR lenders, gave them all the documents that they needed. And one person was like, hey, it's going to be 20% down that you need, but we can make it happen. I'm like, all right, cool. We have 20%, but I will admit like the money was going to start to get tight, especially with buying all new furniture and cosmetics and all that good jazz. 20% is what it is. Now, the second DSCR lender, he actually was going to give us a conventional loan. He said that he can do 15%. And Clay and I were through the moon. We were so excited. We're like, oh, that just saved us so much money. We could either put more money toward the furniture, which honestly, not needed, or we can just have it as like safe money in the bank and whatnot, because honestly, like we're having a baby, so we probably should not be like getting that tight on money. So we're gonna go with the 15%. Are you knee deep in renovations for your Airbnb and need a boost to keep you going? Look no further. Aloha has you covered with a clean, delicious protein bar that fuels your day without weighing you down. My husband and I are huge fans. Aloha protein bars are our daily go-to, especially when we're busy with projects. Unlike those protein bars that are literally just like candy bars that leave you feeling sluggish, Aloha plant-based protein bars are made from simple organic ingredients you can trust. Each bar tastes incredible and keeps us energized and ready to tackle whatever the day throws at us, renovations included. And guess what? You can get 20% off your first purchase with the code the Airbnb Roadmap. That's 20% off feeling great and eating clean with Aloha protein bars. Head over to aloha.com and use the code the Airbnb Roadmap today. These links are also in the show notes, so make sure to click on that and get your protein bars. The numbers were the best for that one. We can save some money in, reserves if anything happened to our family or any of the properties. And to be like completely transparent, like we do keep our business funds separate from our family funds, but you never know, like life can happen. So ultimately, we wanted more money in the bank, right? So we decided to write an offer. The way that I structured this offer was very pleasing for Clay and I. And usually whenever we find a short-term rental, it's like competing with others. Like the last cabin that we had to compete with, I believe, 6 other offers. And it's always like we usually have to give up something, like our unborn child, pretty much. This one was not the case. This one has been on the market for, I believe it was 39 days. And no other interested parties. So I told Clay, I was like, hey, this deal is a go if we can get it under a certain price. So I knew that they're going to negotiate. Whenever it comes to negotiations, I always expect that people are just going to negotiate in the middle. So, for example, and these are not the actual numbers that we paid for this cabin, but let's just say it's $500,000. No, actually, let's just say it was $520,000. What I always do is if my bottom dollar, like I need to get, let's say $510,000 for the purchase price, I always go at 500, knowing that they are going to counter back in the middle. You know, sometimes they do that and sometimes they don't. But honestly, most of the time, people counter in the middle. So with this property, I wrote the purchase price way under, knowing that they're going to counter back. I also did a seller credit, meaning that seller shall credit buyer X amount of dollars. This will go toward the closing costs, the prepaids, anything that the lender can use to help us save money at the closing table. So we don't have to bring as much money to the closing table out of pocket. Now we're going to offer under the listed price. We're going to ask for seller credit. And then also, as being a full-time real estate agent, or honestly just a licensed agent in Wisconsin, I was able to get some money for my commission as well, which is a huge added bonus. So all of this came into play. And I was like, you know what, like they're not going to counter back with nice terms, like we are asking too much, but hey, we're not competing. So might as well. The worst that can happen is they say no, and if they say no, then we'll just renegotiate something else. Well, he came back and he fell right into where I wanted him to be. It was the price that I wanted for the house. It was a price that was comfortable. He didn't even negotiate the seller credit. He just left that in. He negotiated my commission a little bit, which I'm still a little like irritated with because I know how much he made as well. Either way, we purchased the property with the terms that we want. Now, as we were going through, we had a inspection. With this inspection, everything looked pretty fine and dandy. There was some issues with like a wet attic wall because where the chimney met the house, there's some cracks, so like water was seeping in between and then getting the exterior wall wet, which then led to the attic getting wet. But honestly, like we have a guy that is going to the property. He's going to fix it up. Everything's going to be fine and dandy. The rest of the stuff was like pretty minimum. So I was like, cool. Inspection, good. Appraisal came back good. And then also the finance came out. Well, yeah, the finance came out good. But when it came to finance, and kind of backtracking a little bit, when we got an accepted offer, for some reason, I was telling my husband, Clay, about a local lender that I always use for everyone else, like all my other clients, Joe. And I actually did interview him in this podcast. So I reached out to Joe and I was like, hey, you know what? There is a deal that we are actually under contract with. We are getting 15% down. Curious to know if you can do 10% down conventional loan, depending on like our money situation. And sure enough, he actually was able to make it happen. And I was like, no way. Like Clay and I celebrated so much that night because that's still like, that's more money that we're saving. And it kind of makes me feel a little bit better, like going through this transaction because of how much money, you know, we're saving versus what we expected like we were going to pay. So this is not the best practice to do. And I'm not saying like do it every single time, but when it comes to, you know, your money, you gotta save it. So unfortunately, I did tell the guy that was going to give us 15%. I said, hey, another lender told us that we can do 10%. I'm so sorry, but we are going to be switching lenders. So right after we got the accepted offer, we switched the lender. I did tell the listing agent this. Everyone was all good. And life was looking pretty smooth. So that is how we structured the offer to purchase. Now, while all of that is happening, Clay is an engineer. He is like an analyst guy. So we went from room to room to room to figure out what all projects we actually needed to do. And that's the biggest thing. The second that you get under contract for short-term rental, your mind is so scatterbrained. You're like, oh my gosh, what do we need to do? Like, how can we prep and make this project go as smooth as possible, as quickly as possible? So my husband went room from room and figured out, all right, in the living room, we need to paint. In the kitchen, we need to remove some upper cabinets, put the stove in a different location, add a hood vent, paint the walls. In the bathroom, we just need to do some cosmetic stuff, maybe paint the cabinets. He just started like brain dumping in his Remarkable. A Remarkable is like a paper tablet pretty much. And he just started brain dumping. Well, then after he figured out all of the projects, even like the little tiny stuff like switching out the handles on the cabinets. Once he put all that stuff down, he then went on Home Depot, Amazon, Menards, all those websites, and he started ordering tools and the necessary supplies that we needed to get these jobs done. So by the time that we close, we already have everything and we can just rock and roll. He did this right when we went under contract. And it kind of made his mind feel a lot better of like, all right, these are actually the things that we need to do. This is how much I predict each item or task to take. So let's say paint all the living rooms. It's going to take about 6 hours to paint this whole living room. That way he was able to predict how many weekends, because we're just up there for the weekends, how many weekends it will take to get this project done. Now, with other people, they're probably not going to be this detailed, but we have a baby on his way. And I told my husband, I was like, hey, like, I will text you if, my water breaks or if I'm about to go into labor. You better drop everything, like literally everything, and get to the hospital. Like, I'm not going to have you miss the delivery of our baby because of a short-term rental. So he's making sure that he is getting all these projects done before our due date, and honestly like a couple weeks before the due date. So he did that. While he's doing his brain dumping and analyzing and all that good jazz, I'm working on the designs. So I reached out to a place called Showplace, and I have an interior designer for the short-term rental. Again, if you listen to the How to Furnish Your Short-Term Rental episode, you will know that I don't typically do that. I usually just decorate them myself. But this time around, I was like, you know what? Let's try an interior designer. Designing a short-term rental is extremely stressful on me because I'm not a good designer, and I will literally just search all of the websites and not make a single decision about like the couch I want, and then I get stressed and it's a whole thing. So this time around, we hired an interior designer. I figured out the kind of like the theme of the cabin, and we met with her over Zoom. From there, she did the living room and the primary bedroom. She did a mock or like a design mood board for us and was like, hey, is this kind of like the theme that you were looking for? Like, is this what you were imagining? And truthfully, I was not expecting what she came up with because I'm not a designer. And I was like, oh, would not have thought about that, but it works. So once we kind of gave her the approval for that, she went ahead and did all the other rooms except for the kitchen and bathroom. Yes, I'm still salty about that if you listen to the other episodes. And if you didn't, then quick side note, when I signed up for this company, I gave them the total square footage, how many beds, how many baths. Well, during the design process, I was like, hey, like, we're missing a lot of things. Like, you just gave me the mood boards for the bedrooms and the living room and the dining room and the game room. That was it. Like, what about on top of the mantle for the fireplace? What about the bookcase? How about the kitchen? How about the bathrooms? And I guess they don't do kitchens and they don't do bathrooms. So that was like kind of a shocker. I was like, okay, like they still need to be designed. And she's like, well, like in listings, people don't really care about that stuff. Wrong. They do. Like, the kitchen is where people hang out. Like, I want that to look as cute as possible. But, I did pay a lower amount than other competitors, and that's what I'm paying for. So ultimately, I could have gone with someone a lot more expensive, but this was in our budget at the time. So, again, Clay's working on his renovation stuff. I'm working on the design. Once she sent all of the design pieces to me, I was able to look at all of the furniture pieces that she picked out for the whole house. And she also gave me prices. What she did not do was give me links. So what I did was in Google, I just took a screenshot of what that furniture piece looked like. And then in Google, there's a button that kind of looks like a camera. And you can actually upload a photo, and Google will search the whole internet to find that photo. A lot of times it was coming from Wayfair, Amazon, and then other designer furniture websites that wasn't like the highest end, but wasn't cheap. So that kind of made me feel better. I was able to then kind of compare her prices with the prices that I saw. Most of the furniture pieces were lining up, which makes sense. She wouldn't put just something super expensive in there. But I did find, for example, kitchen chairs that she wanted, sage green plastic kitchen chairs. I found similar ones, sage green plastic kitchen chairs, for half the price, and no one would even notice the difference. And the quality might be a little bit cheaper, but it's an Airbnb. Stuff gets destroyed all the time, so I wasn't really too worried about it. So at that point, I just said, hey, let's not buy these kitchen chairs. I'm going to get something else. And she was totally fine with that, which was awesome. I also found some rugs that were cheaper. Now, another part of this was the dimensions. I did give her dimensions for all the rooms, and that's how she can plan out where the furniture was going to go. Well, the app I used was not the best. And usually if you get interior designer, you need to get a service called Matterport. Matterport is kind of like that 3D version of your house. You could walk through the house. It's kind of like a virtual walkthrough. You could kind of put your avatar body in the house and then have that kind of walk around. It's a really cool software that a lot of real estate agents use for their listings and interior designers as well. I did not get this because I was cheap. I was like, hey, I can just use an app, get these dimensions. Well, some of my dimensions were wrong. So there's that. So once I went into the property, I actually finalized some of my dimensions. Some of them were off. So for example, in the game room, she was going to add a pool table. Well, I was like, I don't think a pool table is actually going to fit in this room. Let's switch it to air hockey. So I made some tweaks like that. Again, all of this is happening while we're in escrow stage. Now, we did not, and this is something huge, a big tip, we did not purchase any of the furniture until we closed on the property. The reason is because you have no idea what's going to happen. A week before closing, the deal can fall through, and then you're stuck with all of this stuff. Especially if you use an interior designer, you can't get a refund. That stuff is yours. So that's why we always just do it right when we close. Now, is this the best for timing? Probably not, but how fast things ship nowadays, we're going to get all of the furniture within a week or two. So I'm not really too worried because this project's going to take 2 months. So how are you doing so far? I know I'm talking kind of fast and jumping around a little bit, but there is a lot that happens during escrow. That's not just trying to close on the house. You are trying to figure out the design. You're trying to figure out all the renovation projects that you need to do and in what order. So that is what we did during escrow. Now, we closed on the property, and now it's go time. We purchased all of the furniture, and Clay is starting to do all the renovation tasks and all that stuff based off his list, which is actually really satisfying that he has those lists, because the very first weekend, I was like, all right, what do we need to do? This is the first weekend. Let's look at your list. and we knocked everything out plus some. And there was some, like, for example, in the living room, we said that we're going to paint it. It actually didn't need paint. And to be quite transparent, if I would have painted the living room, I think I would have done a worse job, because there's a lot of like wood beams, and getting around the wood beams with the paint would have been a nightmare, and I think would have looked crappier. So we just actually left the living room how it is. Now, in Clay's list, it says that would have taken, I think, 8 hours to complete. So that just saved us 8 hours on his list, which is really nice, and it kind of makes us feel better about like the timeline. Now, while we are renovating, we also have all of the furniture being shipped to our house. I get a lot of questions on how you actually do this, like how you furnish a short-term rental, and this is how. Is you get everything delivered to your house during the weekday while you are not at the cabin doing renovations. You can unbox everything and also assemble it. Hopefully you have a room in your house that people don't really use that much, like a formal dining room or something like that. And you just start stacking all of the furniture in that room. And when you are ready, you could get a U-Haul and just move everything to the cabin and just have like a staging day, like a decorating day, move-in day type of thing. Now, some people are like, hey, I live 8 hours away. Can I just have everything shipped to the cabin? My answer for that is absolutely you can, but it's very risky. The reason why I say it's risky is because, one, you are trusting that someone else, maybe a neighbor or someone else in the neighborhood that you pay, will actually bring the boxes into the house. And that's how you have to do it, is you have to find someone that you can pay, bring the boxes into the house. Now, will you trust that person to actually go into the house and bring in the furniture? I'm not sure. Also, what if someone knows that the cabin is unoccupied? There's a lot of boxes on the front porch. People can definitely take those packages. So, truthfully, I don't really like that strategy of having things shipped to the cabin, because you just don't know where the box is. Could say that it arrived, and then it actually didn't arrive. So I personally like to have all the furniture shipped to the house. That way I can track everything. I can see if it's damaged. If it's damaged, I can return it, or like notify the designer that like, hey, this is damaged, and so on and so forth. Now, let's jump ahead. Again, Clay and I are not at this point, but this is the next step, is once the cabin is fully furnished, everything is looking pretty, we have a photographer that goes out and takes photos. This photographer should have experience taking photos of short-term rentals. Now, there's a big difference between taking photos of a listing and taking photos for a short-term rental. The difference is because you need to have some detailed photos of like up close of like the game area. Maybe a board game is on a table and it's all spread out, the game of life. Let's just say it's the game of life. And everything's spread out. It looks like someone's actually playing the board game. They will get a detailed shot of that, and it kind of shows the guests like, hey, we have some board games here, and it's going to be a fun time. So the photographer needs to take some really nice detailed shots. If you also want to go above and beyond, you can have models in your photos. We will get into this discussion a whole nother episode, but that's another tip and trick that people do, is they have models and photos, and then it kind of gives like that lifestyle type feel of like, hey, this is what you can expect when you book our short-term rental. Once we get the photos, we then put it up on Airbnb and Vrbo. I also then put it on hospitable.com. That is the property software program that I use. And then I also link our price labs to Hospitable, all of that good jazz. So pretty much once we have the photos, it's like go time when it comes to setting up the short-term rental on all of the software programs and setting up all of my automations as well. I will admit the very first time that we get a booking for new property, I'm like super nervous because I've done it a lot of times, but again, I make mistakes. So I'm like, oh my God, like, is the automation actually going to go out? Do I need to reply myself? Like, what does this look like? And then I kind of freak out, but usually it's all good and I usually don't have any hiccups. Actually, the very first property that we bought, I had my parents stay at the cabin and they tested all the systems for me because I was just making it up. So they tested all the systems for me and it was still really good. So thank you, parents, for being my little test dummy at the time. One thing that I did not mention that you also need to do is start reaching out and creating that small but mighty team of yours for that property. So contacting cleaners, start interviewing them in person. And you want to find a handyman, you want to find the lawn care people, you want to find your small but mighty team that will help conquer the short-term rental and make your life a lot easier. When you interview cleaners, think about backup cleaner because you don't know if the cleaner that you did choose will be the right fit. And it will save you a lot of time and possibly money if you have a backup person and you're like, hey, like, I'm sorry, I did hire someone else, but you are my backup. So if anything happens, you are the next person I will be calling. And most of the time they respect that. So just kind of keep that one in mind that during the design and renovation phase, you also want to start thinking about your small and mighty team, especially if you live far and you're only there for a couple weekends. You don't want to make a whole separate trip just to interview people. Okay, I know that was a lot, but that is literally exactly what Clay and I did for this property. And other properties, we do some pretty much the same system. Like we have a system, we pretty much stick to it. The only difference for this one is the design portion of it. But you now know where we were at. We were just sitting on the couch. I looked at Clay and I was like, hey, I kind of have an itch to buy another one. And then it went to the research phase. And then it went to the implementing phase. And then it went to the action. And obviously the result, which is a live short-term rental. Right now, we're still in the action phase. We are doing the decorating, the renovations, and we have not launched it yet. But in a month and probably a month and a half, we will be. And it's going to look really awesome. So I can't wait for you guys to see that one. But till then, I will keep you updated. But that is now the whole process of finding, analyzing, purchasing, renovating, and launching. Thanks for joining me on the Airbnb Roadmap. If you're loving these episodes and want to keep the conversation going, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with someone who's ready to dive into the world of short-term rentals. Got a question or topic you would love to hear about? Reach out. This podcast is all about learning and growing together. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram, the Airbnb Roadmap Podcast, for more tips, tricks, and behind-the-scene insights. Until next time, here's to turning your short-term rental dreams into thriving realities. I'll see you back here soon.